Hey everyone, this is Dr. AnthonyChaffee. I'm here with a very special guest, Dr. Kevin Stock. He's a dentist and a carnivore and ripped ass guy. I've just seen a couple of his Instagram posts where he's absolutely showing off, which is good. Kevin, thank you very much for coming on. How are you, sir?
Doing good. Hey, thanks for having me. I was just actually before this listening to a podcast you were on, and I saw you mention that like you weren't really working out for like the last several months, but a couple of
Mm.
times, and like I'm like, what?
Yeah.
How does he stay so jacked? So I mean, I want to hear about
Yeah.
those secrets.
Well, I mean, it's really like, I mean, obviously you built it up over years and, but just with the carnivore diet, you just maintain it, and so I'm not as muscular as I would be, but most of it gets preserved. But, yeah, when I actually get to go in the gym, it does make a big difference, but, yeah, hopefully I can get back in there. Yeah. Yeah.
I do find like the hardest part is building it.
Mm,
Maintaining it tends to be a little bit easier, uh, but especially
yeah.
if you have the right diet.
Yeah, yeah, well, exactly. And I mean, I mean, people, don't really, believe that A, I'm not working out as much, or B, I'm not using like performance enhancing drugs or anything like that. But what they don't realize is, I'm 42 years old and I've been lifting weights regularly since I was, I don't know, 14. And so these things build up over time, and so it's not like this happened overnight or anything like that.
Yeah,
And
I was just on the Instagram comments on those photos, and of course, some people are like, "Oh, what drugs you taking?"
yeah.
And people that have been in the gym for a while, I'm like, I'm actually like, because I'm kind of similar to you, where it's like, I was a fat, overweight kid, and so I got into fitness in like junior high, where I was like, I'm tired of being this fat kid. I'm gonna figure this
Yeah.
out. So I've been in the gym for over 20 years, lifting weights every single day. And I'm
Yeah.
like, if anything, I'm actually kind of embarrassed by my physique today that it's not better having spent that much time in the gym. Uh,
Yeah.
but I think people that just have not put that kind of time in think those results are impossible without some kind of performance enhancing drugs or something like that.
That's it. Yeah. And it just does just come down to hard work because, even friends of mine that would have worked out for a similar length of time as I would, like put the same hours of during the week in the gym, they're not really working out the same as I was. I remember I was lifting with a buddy of mine when we were, early 20s. And, he was a good guy, he's a big dude, sort of my size. And so we were lifting, we were doing bench. And so he's going and he just, rips out 10 very easily. I'm like, yeah, doing great, man. Keep it going. And then he goes to like, just put it up on 10. I'm like, no, man, you got more in the tank. Like, and I started fighting with him to like do more reps. And he starts pushing it back and forcing it and like fighting me. And I'm leaning my whole body weight on this. And he's
Like,
able to like push me up and re-rack the weights. I'm like, if you have that much strength to push what you were lifting and my body weight up onto the
you
rack,
aren't
like you
done.
clearly had more in the tank.
Yeah.
And whereas I'm sure you work to muscle fatigue and you really try to wear yourself out and you try to get absolutely the most out of your time at the gym that you can. And I think that was what pays the dividends. It's like, I think of those, if you're going for 10 but you could have done 12, you should
Right.
do 12. I consider those last two the workout. It's
Right. Exactly. Big
yeah.
difference between going through the motions and like getting the benefits that someone's after.
Yeah. Yeah. Muhammad Ali had a good quote where they asked him, how many reps of X, Y, or Z do you do? And he said, I have no idea. I don't, I don't count just reps. I work until I'm tired and then I start counting to see how far I can push myself.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's what Arnold says too. He's like, I start counting once I'm ready to quit, then I start counting the reps.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's good, because you are trying to burn yourself out. That's what like I've been looking up some of these old bodybuilders like Serge Nubret, who's like Arnold Schwarzenegger's like body idol. That's who he like looked up to when he was first coming on.
Mm-hmm.
Dude ate 6 pounds of horse meat a day, which is awesome. And the guy's jacked. If people ever watched Arnold's movie, Pumping Iron, where on his last
Iron, yeah.
last yeah, it's classic, on his last run for the Mr. Olympia, Serge Nubret came in second. in that competition. And I remember seeing that going like, dude, that guy is yoked, you know. I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, I think that guy probably should have won. And I think Serge was probably like something like 20 years older than Arnold in that. And the guy was absolutely just freakishly ripped. And he does this thing where he would do 12 sets of 12, but he would only have 30 seconds rest in between each set for upper body, and then only 60 seconds for lower body. And he just because he just wants to wear himself out. He just wants to completely wear out his muscles. And I did that for legs. I only did 8 sets of 12. I was just like, that was a big workout.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, 8 sets of 12 that's significant volume, especially if you're having like deep, like short rest in between. Like, yeah, I'll be on the ground after that.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. If I get enough rest, I can just sort of keep doing sets. But this was, with just that 60 seconds, like I was able to wear myself out, which is actually very hard to do since being on Carnivore. What sort of workout routine do you have going now? What do you try to do?
I'll tell you what, has changed dramatically for like recently over the last 20 years. So I've just been in the gym, like kind of like the typical gym rat, like bodybuilding kind of style. I mean, that's why I got into health and fitness in the first place. It was really just the fitness part. Like I didn't want to be a fat kid. And so I was like trying to figure out that. So I did mostly focusing around bodybuilding stuff. I did some strength kind of competition stuff in college. I did physique competitions once I got into dental school. And it wasn't until several years after that where I started to put the health into health and fitness. Sometimes those are like spoken in the same breath. And that's kind of what, reignited my passion into fitness, like in the last 7 years or so. Was for the first 20 years, 15, 20 years, it was just all about fitness. And whenever I got a great physique and all that, or good enough, I was pretty happy with it. But I just didn't feel like I wanted to feel. And I was like, there's probably more to the equation. So that's actually what got me like down the rabbit hole. But yeah, I did typical kind of like bodybuilding style workouts for most of my life, but my gym closed down in 2020. And so for the first time, I did these resistance band training workouts in my house. And I'll tell you what, like very skeptical that like these little, these rubber bands are going to do anything for me, really. I was kind of hoping to be like, they'll just preserve what I've built over time. But I'll tell you what, I have come to love the resistance bands. Like, like really, really do like them. I mean, so I've been using the X3 bar for the last couple of years now. And the variable resistance is kind of like the hype of it, but I really do like the variable resistance that the bands provide. Super easy on the joints. I'd say my workouts have not been like as like intense. Like I'd be in the gym for probably 10 hours a week, most weeks over the last 2+ decades. But now I've been doing home workouts, 30 to 45 minutes. And even that, I've been doing them kind of lazily.
Yeah.
And it's been good. So I get to listen to like your podcast while I was working out this afternoon. So it's like, it's double, I'd, multitask. So I'm not as gung ho as I was like in the past, where it's like my life was fitness. Now it's something I still love doing and everyday part of my life, but it's it's just not priority number one anymore.
Yeah. Like that's sort of the same with me. Obviously, like you don't necessarily have the time anymore. But I would do that as well. I try to multitask and try to listen to things at the same time. And like Thomas Sowell is like my favorite author and thinker, and so I would listen to a lot of his stuff. I get a lot of his books on tapes or his talks on YouTube, and I would just listen to these things. And I figured that if I was listening to something like a book on tape or a lecture or a debate that I wanted to listen to anyway, or I wanted a book I wanted to read anyway, then I could justify working out for 3 or 4 hours,
I mean, that is part of it. So that is a lot. Like I like the working out, but I've been kind of lazy, like I was saying, but I'm listening to various podcasts that I otherwise would not like. I wouldn't have time to sit down and listen to like an hour podcast just
Mm,
randomly. Like it just doesn't fit in anywhere else in
no.
my life. So I'm like, hey, this is the time to, bookmark these podcasts I want to listen to. And, that's when I do it.
Yeah. So how are you finding like the X3 band? Like, I mean, as far as like your results are concerned. Um,
You know, Dr. Jakish,
mhm,
uh, I like him a lot. I think like any kind of like marketing, I think some of the claims like you're gonna build 3 times as much muscle in like
mm,
half the time or 1/10 the time. I think maybe that's like overdoing it. But when it comes to me, like I think of it kind of like the principles we were just talking about. Like
mm,
you want to take the muscle to a fatigue to give it a stimulus to have a reason to grow.
yeah.
Uh, and with bands, I think you can do that. So whether it's better than a gym, I think just a gym has certain benefits that I don't have at home. Some of it's just like the other guys in the gym. There's like, kind of motivation. Hey, that guy's like lifting a ton. I need to step my game up or something like that.
Yeah.
Kind of get you out of comfort zone where it's like at home, it's easy to get into like, oh, I do 10 reps and that's just what I do of this band. So I think there's pros to being in a gym and there's pros to having, the resistance bands. I was saying like, I've been looking forward to get back into like a real gym. But I'm not going to stop doing the resistance bands. Like I like them that much. And there's certain exercises I really, really like that
Mhm.
I can do only on resistance bands, like these single leg squats, which I absolutely hate, but like, I know that's why like I need to do them.
Yeah.
Uh, and you can't really replicate that in with regular weights. I mean, you can do lunges and stuff like that, but the variable resistance with those I find, particularly beneficial.
Okay. So just the regular sort of front squats that you do with the X3, but you just do it one legged.
So yeah, long story short, I've never been a good squatter. That's like been my Achilles heel for a number of reasons. Deadlifting I've been fine, but so these are just single leg, kind of like lunges. It's you can do them in place of basically a squat.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a single
Yeah.
leg split squat is what it is. So
Okay.
instead of the double,
Yeah.
normal squat.
Okay. Yeah. I actually got it recently myself, and I've been playing around with it, and that's probably the most exercise that I've had, or actually I have in a couple months. Is that every now and then I'll just sort of hop on it and do that. I'm trying to get myself into a routine of actually doing like a full workout with it, but yeah, I haven't really gotten there yet.
What I really like about it is for that exact reason where in like if you follow his programming with the X3, it's like 10 minutes or something like that. Some
Yeah. Oh
ridiculously
yeah.
short amount of time where it's like,
Nice.
okay, look, if you're not working out, you really don't have an excuse to use time as an excuse anymore if it only takes 10
Yeah.
minutes. If someone's
Yeah.
like, you got
True.
to block out an hour for working out, and you got to travel there, and you got to warm up, and you got to cool down, you got to go home. It's like could be a 2-hour event where it's
Yeah.
like, hey, if it's an X3, 10 minutes in your living room,
Yeah.
your excuses crumble. Like
Yeah. True.
everyone's got 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like pretty wretched because sometimes I'll still not do it because I'm just doing so many other things. And
Yep.
but yeah, absolutely I should, can, and will start doing that as well. Um, nice. So with that sort of building, that training regime, have you noticed like a significant amount of muscle growth and muscle development with the bands, or is it just more sort of in the same sort of level that you would get at the gym?
I would say it's hard because there's a lot of actually variables here, which is probably
Mhm.
might be educational for some people. Is most of my muscle growth came high school, college,
Mhm.
and by the time I was like in dental school, I saw gains, but like most of the muscle gains happened, and it's normal. Like you'll get like 80% of, like I think that's pretty consistent with like what the research suggests. Like 80% of your overall kind of muscle potential you'll get if you like dedicate 2 years or so to actually working out, which I find very like for like new people, like very like exciting to be like, look, I can get to my muscle potential in just 2 years. I don't have to do this for 20 years. But
Yeah.
then it's been like very much more incremental, like some gains here. And, we can go into some of the dumb experiments I've done over the last 20 years, but it's like I do experiments where I'm still working out hard, but I do a diet experiment and like I lose a ton of muscle because I'm do something stupid.
Yeah.
And so it's long story short to this is that not that I can't keep getting better. I definitely can, but the incremental improvements is so small that it's hard to notice. I weigh roughly the same as I did, when I was competing. I
Yeah.
stay leaner than I like ever have, because it's hard to get fat if you're eating only meat or mostly meat. Like
Yeah,
it's like
it is.
like the traditional kind of like, in dental school, I did more of a traditional bulk before one of the shows. And I really bulked up. So just for perspective, I'm like roughly 170 pounds, but I bulked up to 220.
Oh,
And it wasn't good weight. Like
no.
I was fat, but like literally I could not do that now
Yeah.
eating like a proper diet. Like
Mhm.
you need to eat
Yeah.
something besides meat to try and
Yeah.
put on that kind of weight.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. Like you said, it's unhealthy weight. So, when
Oh
you
yeah,
got
it's
up to,
bad.
to what, 225, then what did you cut back down to get to your lean sort of competition size at the end of that? Like how much did you lose?
Basically to what I am now.
Yeah. Okay.
Down to
See.
I've
Yeah.
competed between like 160, 170 pounds.
Okay. That's crazy, man. And that's always what I think. I think it's obviously, there's just obvious fat and visceral fat, but there's going to be intramuscular fat as well, and that's what I think a lot of this is going to be. Just like a marbled steak or something wagyu. It looks all big and bulky and puffy, but a lot of that's going to be fat, or at least the portion of it is, and then it's just going to go away when you're cutting off, and then so it's just you're sort
Exactly.
of thinking that you have more than you actually do.
Kind of spinning your wheels, and it's actually like
Yeah.
it's one of the mistakes that I learned a lot of mistakes the hard way. And one is like, okay, you put on all this fat, maybe you put on a couple pounds of muscle, but now you have to lose all that fat and try not to lose that little bit of muscle you just put on. And if
Yeah.
anyone that's done like extended diets will know, it's like not losing the muscle is like the most important part of that diet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I spent 9, 12, 18 months fattening up to 220. Maybe I put on a
Yeah.
couple pounds of muscle, and now I got to go lose 60 pounds of fat
Oh,
while holding on to that little bit of muscle that I put on during that time. Not a smart
yeah.
way to go about
No, that doesn't sound fun at all. So you've got
it.
so how long have you been carnivore now?
I started eating only meat in 2017.
Mhm.
That's when really the fitness was taking a back seat to like feeling better. And by feeling
Mhm.
better, mostly it was related to like mental performance. I
Yeah.
was working a lot. I had some different business ventures going on all at once. And I was like, you know what? Like, I need to like get my head around like this is number one. Brain performance is number one. Physical performance will take a back seat. And so that's what got me into it back. This was in 2017.
Yeah. And then since then, like with your with your working out and everything like that, have you found that it's easy to put on muscle and do everything you need to do?
Yeah. So, you know what? I've done a lot of experiments. And so I guess for just a little bit of backstory would be in 2016 is what really when I wanted to get these business ventures are going on. And this is an unpopular like thing I tell people, but firsthand experience. So I can just tell what happened to me. I was like, I've done a ketogenic diet before, but I'm going to really do a ketogenic diet this time for the mental performance. I've read about it,
Yeah.
but I always, in the previous times I've done ketogenic diets prior to that, I would say I quote unquote cheated. And by cheated, I mean, I always kept my protein higher than any kind of like ketogenic diet would recommend. Cause I'm like, look, I already know from even earlier prior experiments is where like I limited protein, the negative consequences of that.
Mm.
Uh, and so long story short, in 2016, I was like, look, I'm gonna do a real ketogenic diet. I'm gonna limit my protein to, I think it was 0.7 grams per pound, maybe per pound of lean body mass. Anyways, I hadn't restricted protein that low in a long time. Like I was doing MCT oil, my fats were high, and I even like because I was really going for the brain performance. I'll do some intermittent fasting. I
Mhm.
didn't purposefully like restrict calories though, but I just lost so much lean body mass. And it was
No.
very clear, like the scale was dropping like fast.
Yeah.
Feel like, oh, you're losing fat, but like I was already pretty
No.
lean.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm pretty like stubborn kind of self experimenter. So like I gave it like a good amount, like 6 months. And it's like, holy cow, I lost like a lot of muscle mass. And so I was like, okay, this is not working out. Like I was willing to sacrifice some physical performance for the mental performance, but not just lose everything I'd built for over 20 years. And I wasn't really getting the mental benefits that would have like even let me, like, it wasn't, the cost benefit ratio there was not good. So it just led me down the rabbit hole. I had done a lot of research, and one of the researchers, Bruce Ames, I returned to his work, and he's like, there's all these plant toxins, right? Like, and so I knew that, kind of ignored it because I was like, okay, but whatever. But I took him seriously. I started removing like oxalates and lectins, and I went down the rabbit hole where I was just eating meat in 2017. And the muscle mass I lost previously started to come back. So I was like, all right, that's good. But the most important thing to me was like, my brain felt like I was like, all right, I've been able to work 15 hours a day. Like I'm focused, I'm not living on caffeine, I'm getting good sleep. Like that which was my top priority came to fruition. And then the body composition stuff was a nice side effect to get my muscle mass back and stuff like that. But after that was like, what, 2017? I ate just beef and water for a long time. I did experiments with like more of a nose to tail approach, like throwing in organs and eggs and seafood, and just various experiments within like meat only. And I did experiment with like a carnivore only like bulking strategy, as well as like a carnivore only cutting strategy. So this went on for years. So this takes us, I don't know, 2019 or something like that was like the first time in years where I introduced any single plant-based food in, for it was like a long time. And the main reason I did it was I wrote a guide. This is a kind of like to help people stay on track with this story. In 2017, I started only eating meat, and I was writing about why. I started a website called Muscle Science back in dental school, where I help people on the side of dental school with physique stuff. And so I had a little list, and I was telling this email list, say, hey, this is what I'm doing now, why I'm doing it. I wrote a 30-day guide. I wrote a like Health Danger, which is now Health Dangers of a Plant-Based Diet ebook. So other people started doing it. I thought maybe 5 people would do it. I wrote a 30-day guide to be like, because there's people like, well, how do I do it? So I was like, this is my recommendations. And at the end of 2017, I think it was, Baker was on, Dr. Sean Baker was on Rogan, and this 30-day guide, just like the site I started is meat.health, where I basically just had this stuff up. It had like 100,000 downloads of this guide in over the next couple of years. And I had my email address in this guide. So I've got just thousands of emails. Like, what about this? What about this? This is good. This is bad. So there's a big learning experiment there, which is why I did some of these other experiments. But that brings me to, in 2019, one of the most common questions I got was like, well, what happens like if you bring back in carbohydrates? Like, will you be able to tolerate? Will you be able to eat fiber foods ever again? And like, I was always able to give like a theoretical answer. Like, I think this is what made sense to me, but I didn't have firsthand personal experience. So that was the first time I introduced any kind of carbohydrate back into the diet in a number of years. And so then I did that experiment. And since then, the last couple of years, I've been full carnivore, and then I'll experiment with something, full carnivore, experiment with something, I'd say. But mostly my diet is pretty boring, meaning like I do like beef. Like I do 80% plus beef, and then sprinkle in eggs here sometimes, sprinkle in seafood sometimes, sprinkle in chicken or pork here and there. But it's like mostly just beef. I just buy a cow, eat the whole cow. It's in the deep freeze. Once it's gone, I'm getting another one. I'll supplement that. And if I'm doing some weird experiment, which seems to always be like a little something on the side, that's when I'll throw in try something.
Nice. Yeah. I'm basically the same. Like I've always just felt best on beef, and I'll eat other animals as well. Chicken, fish, chicken rarely, but like more pork and fish sometimes, and shellfish, whatever. And that's always been good, but I always just feel the best on beef, and so that's just where I gravitate to naturally. Yeah.
After you had beef for lunch, because I remember like the bodybuilding years is like chicken, man. Like I ate
Yeah.
just ridiculous amounts of chicken. And
Yeah.
now it's like, oh my God, how did I do that?
Yeah. Seriously. I think back on that sometimes too. Was it because it's the chicken breast, right? Because that's when you're supposed
Exactly.
to eat
The
because
lean
it's
meat.
lean. Yeah.
Yep.
And and like yeah, I still just think back to how many damn chicken breasts I ate in college and afterwards. It's insane. And I don't think I enjoyed any of them,
No,
like
it,
it's
it, it goes back to like, because this is what I talk about probably the most is like, if you want to get like just body composition only, yeah, you can eat chicken breast. Like the formula for that's actually, it's not very difficult, but it's not going to give you fitness and health. Like you might just get it,
right.
like you might lose the body fat, but you're going to feel terrible.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about carnivore or heavy meat based, especially like red meat, is like you can have it get the physique, but you can also feel good and be healthy. Like you can have your steak and eat it too, is like what I'd like to say.
Yeah, yeah, that's true too. Well, and that was the thing, I've mentioned before, but every day feels like my birthday. I was talking to my dad when I first started doing this, because like on your birthday you get your special meal. It's just like this is like there's no guilt. You just have what you want. It's your day. Every time I would just pick some big, massive steak with like a béarnaise sauce or something like that, and prawns or whatever with it, and that's always what I wanted. That's the only thing I wanted. And now I have just one or two big ass steaks every day, and like I know how to cook them very well now, and so they're just amazing every time. And so it's like every single day it feels like my birthday.
Yeah.
And people can attest to this, where it's like I do this subconsciously, where like I'll just be eating a steak, and you'll just say out of nowhere, I'm like, take my first bite and I'm like, damn, that's good. Every day I do that, and I don't even
Doesn't
mean
get
to.
old.
No, and it's just like every day I'm like, damn, that's good. And and it's just, and then I sort of hear myself, I'm like, well, it is good. It's amazing. And yeah, like yeah,
What's amazing is like after you do that for a while, everything else seems to stop seeming like food in a way. It seems
yes,
like fluff. It's
absolutely.
like I
Yeah,
look at them like I know that's not going to like satisfy me like in
yeah,
any way.
yeah. Yeah, I seriously don't look at these things as food, and technically I don't consider them food, because they're food is species specific, and that is not food to our species, and koala is not going to look at bamboo as if it's food, and panda
It's
is not
true.
going to look at eucalyptus as if it's food, because it's not food to them, and and these things aren't food to us. I remember I was living with my brother. I think I was like 22 at the time. And I was doing carnivore inadvertently, just because I learned that plants were horrible and trying to kill me. And so I just stopped eating them. And I remember I just stopped looking at these things as food. And my brother, I was in the kitchen, my brother's on the couch. He said, "Hey, can you pass me that loaf of bread?" I was like surprised. I had no idea we had bread. I had not seen bread in weeks. And I was just like, "We have bread?" He was like, "Yeah, it's just right by the stove." I'm looking by the stove. Okay, there's nothing there. I was like, "Where by the stove?" He's just like right there to the right of the stove. Can't find it. It's directly to the right of the back burner of the stove on the right. And I'm looking at it. It's like one of those magic eyes. And like picture you, like you can't look at it, and all of a sudden it pops up like a
There it
sailboat. And you're
is.
just like, oh, Jesus. And it was just this loaf of bread, you know? And so I was like, oh God, I got into it. I couldn't see it. My brain did not recognize this thing as in my world. And so yeah, people say it's like, oh, don't you miss, or don't you feel like you're missing out? I'm like, I really don't. I mean, I just don't care. I don't look at these things
Yeah.
like that, you know.
One of the
um
biggest things that changed for me was like I was always kind of had like this all or nothing personality.
mhm.
And I give this example a lot, but it's like I like ice cream a lot, but like if I had ice cream, like I would crush like the entire pint. Like there's no like a small serving for me. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But after a few years of meat only, one of the first things I had was like some ice cream. And it was like, it seems like ridiculous to say, but it's like I had a little bit and I was like, yeah, that's delicious. But like I don't need to like just go kill a tub of ice cream like I used
Yeah.
to. And there really is. I really do think like one of the most beneficial things for like pure carnivore is like healing a relationship with food, like
Mhm.
underlying, get that healed. And there's a lot more freedom in life after that. Like when you can walk through a grocery store and not be like, oh man, I need to go buy that, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Nothing calls out at you, at me to like, oh, I need to go buy some sugar thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because, yeah, people do have a very unhealthy relationship with food. We
I
treat
think
it
so.
as entertainment, which you obviously you should enjoy your food, and that's part of it. Your body's rewarding you for giving it the nutrition that it wants. That's why things taste good. Sugar is a bit of an outlier there, because it's just a quick hit of energy that your body recognizes this is safe, because we don't know of any plants that contain fructose that are acutely poisonous to us. Long term,
Right.
fructose will obviously be a problem, but we recognize this. Okay, this won't kill me today, and I can
Right away.
yeah, exactly. And so it's like we recognize that as safe, which is thought to be why we recognize fructose as the sweetest carbohydrate. So, but other things taste bitter, and the reason they taste bitter is because your body's telling you that these are bad for you. And
Yeah.
then, your body wants certain nutrients that taste good for you. So you're naturally going to enjoy the meat that you eat if you're hungry. But that's not the point of eating. The point of eating
Right.
is getting nutrition and fueling your body. And but we treat it as, like similar to how we use drugs and alcohol or cigarettes.
Yep.
We do this for the experience of it, you know and I think that is quite detrimental, because you tend to think like, oh, it's not that big a deal. It's not, and people who drink don't think it's that big of a deal, and people who do drugs don't think that's too big of a deal, and they tell themselves, oh, it's not that big a deal, it's not that big a deal, and they're doing this stuff for years, and yeah, you can get away with it for a while, but it catches up. And the same
Definitely.
thing with food, and then all of a sudden people wake up and they're quite overweight, and they're quite unhealthy, and they're sore, and they hurt, and they don't know how they got there, and they don't know how the hell to get out of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's one
Yeah.
of I made like just a rule to myself was like, because I drank up until dental school when I was in dental school, I just quit drinking. And one of the reasons why, it's just in life today, at least for me, like an opportunity to drink comes up probably 3 times a week, right? Like, oh, we're gonna go here, and then you're gonna drink, you're gonna go here. So it's like, if you don't have a rule that I just don't drink, well, then every single time I go out, I have to decide, am I drinking tonight? Am I not? It's like sometimes it's just easier to
Yeah.
be like, look, I like to have this rule. Like it doesn't take any willpower. I just don't drink.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Yeah.
it gets to what you're saying. It's like things just get so habituated, not a big deal. All right, I just drink whenever I go out on occasion with friends, and that happens twice a week.
Yeah.
So twice a week drinking over weeks and then years, and it
Yeah.
adds up.
Yeah. Shit adds up. It does. Yeah. And like, and sometimes even more, because you either sort of make a decision to start cutting that out, or you just let it go. And some people can sort of maintain a balance, but generally you do one or the other. People are just
Hmm.
slowly start building up their habit, whatever it is. It starts building up and building up and building up and building up until they hit a point and they go, "Ooh, this is getting a little too heavy. I really need to do something about this."
Hmm.
And then some people don't even think about it, and they just sort of keep going. And not everyone, some people have a very stable relationship with these things, but it's very easy to get into an unstable relationship.
It's
And
true.
yeah, and so and the same with food, just like you say, I think it's the same thing. I think it's a addictive patterns, and relationships with illicit substances. You're doing this because you enjoy, and people ask me that. Well, why wouldn't you just do this because you enjoy eating pizza or this other thing or whatever? And like, I was just, that is so bizarre to me now. I'm so glad I'm on the outside of that looking in, because so many people's lives are just wrapped up in like, where are we going to go to eat? Where are we going to go to lunch? Where are we going to go to dinner? What are we going to try? And you talk to people, and they're like saying, like, before I met my girlfriend, you're like dating and things like that. So you're like talking to people and you're just getting small talk. And, you talk to me, it's like, so, what are you into? What do you do? And like, I don't know, 90% of girls would just say, oh, I like going out and trying new restaurants. I'm like, that's a hobby? Trying new restaurants. That's what you do for fun. Like that's a part of your life that, that's an activity. It just blew my mind. I was like, no, that's not a thing. Like, like what are your hobbies? What
Right.
do you do with your life? unless you are just that boring that,
Like life outside of food, it's like
yeah. Yeah.
some people can't see past
Yeah.
like what do you mean? What do you do outside of not
Yeah.
eating eating
Yeah.
food?
Well, they don't know, and they don't know how to interact socially without this. When COVID hit, I talked to a lot of people that they said they were just so surprised at themselves at just how much their lives revolved around restaurants. Not even bars and restaurants, just restaurants specifically. They went out to lunch or dinner or breakfast all the time, and that was their social interaction, and that was their main pastime, was going
Yeah.
out to eat. And hopefully that was a bit of a wake-up call for some
I
people.
think it's like 50% of people's food budget is spent eating out. That is just an outrageous
Yeah,
like statistic.
absolutely. Yeah, and that is the thing. There's there's entire generations now that are sort of or people that are two generations away from anyone who ever knew how to cook.
Yeah.
Like, my mom used to cook, and she loved cooking, and so we would watch her and sort of picked it up from her. And this was during the time of the instant meals and the TV dinners and everything that were coming in. And so
That's what I
people,
think I got hit by.
yeah, yeah,
I got
well,
hit by that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because it's for a while there, they were making these ready-made meals that were actually cheaper than the constituent parts. That if you went and bought the ingredients yourself, it would cost
Can't beat
more.
it.
Yeah,
Right. You
and
can't beat
and
it. Yeah.
and it takes longer and it costs more. It's like, why the hell would you
Yeah.
do it? You
Right.
know? And then all of a sudden, no one knows how to cook, and then they're raising kids, who just see you getting dinner out of a bag or going to dinner, and that's what they do. And I knew a girl who was basically in that situation, and she made very good money, and young adult, and but doing very well. But we sort of figured it out, and she was just broke all the time, all the time. And I just sort of was talking to her. She ate out for every single meal. She did not cook a single meal. And she had a daughter. And so she and her daughter would either order Uber Eats or go out to eat every single meal of the day, eating 3 meals a day. And sort of just did some rough sort of calculations. I mean, she was spending 2/3 of her after tax salary
Come on.
on just food.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like,
Wow.
that's wild. And that was a conservative estimate, because like, she would, go to more expensive places, and go drinking and things like that as well. But yeah, but I was like, yeah, that's why you're broke. You're just blowing it on something you could have made yourself.
Yeah. And like you were saying, like when like regarding your birthday, like that's how I feel when I'm cooking at home, because I can make the steak just how I want it, and
Mhm.
which is basically just a quick sear and it's like done. Where it's like, if you go to a restaurant, if you ask for something like that, they're very uncomfortable. Be like, wait, you just want a piece of meat that's quickly
Yeah.
seared. So basically, it's hard to like, if you're eating out all the time, it's going to be hard to eat a good diet. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't want to say it's impossible, but it's tough. I
Mm.
mean, because the whole reason someone's going to charge you more at a restaurant is like because they're going to do something to that food that maybe you couldn't do yourself at home,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like if you're not really doing anything to it, like I just want a plain steak. Don't want any seasoning, and I actually want it rare.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
okay, that uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
And a lot of people do struggle with just that aspect of it, where it's like, well, what do I do in social settings? What do I do when I go into restaurants? You do get used to it, but I just
yeah.
so prefer to cook at home, because I
Oh
can make
yeah,
it better, and it's 1/5 the price, and so I get a lot more for
exactly.
it.
It's a sacrifice to go out.
Yeah, it is. And I understand like where my dad was going from. I remember as a kid, my dad hated going out to restaurants. And my mom would like it because it was a break from her cooking, and we liked it because it was just where we would get to eat things that we normally wouldn't at home. But he was just like, this is such a damn waste of money.
Yeah.
It's like, we just go home. We have food at home. And like, we always had very, very good dinners. My mom was a very good cook. And so, food at home was always fantastic. It was just sort of like fun to go out. And but he was just like, this is just a waste. It's like the food isn't as good, and it's like it's way more expensive. Like this is dumb. And I like totally get it now. I guess that I don't know. I guess that means I'm old or something like that. But like,
Is
yeah.
your family in healthcare?
No, not really. Just mostly in the sciences.
Just you?
Yeah,
Because you
yeah.
mentioned you had a brother you lived with, and
My
said
yeah,
he's not.
my yeah. So I'm one of five siblings, and so I have two brothers and two sisters. My older brother has been in business and has started businesses and worked in various aspects of the corporate world. My younger brother did his PhD in mathematics and he teaches. And then my oldest sister did her master's in neuropsychology, and then but she for work she does like PR marketing for tech companies. And then my
You
other
need no
sister,
psychology for that.
yeah, no, yeah, and then my other sister was doing her PhD in biostatistics and did pharmaceutical research for a while, but then decided she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and so she just raising kids, and they've got the full benefit of that woman's intelligence and drive all went into raising those kids, and they have definitely benefited from that.
So
But
you're smack in the middle.
middle boy, yeah, so I've got
Um,
the two girls and then the three boys, and I'm the middle and that one, yeah. And then my dad was a physicist and a computer scientist, and
Man, so you got brains in the family.
yeah, they do all right. Yeah. Yeah, they do all right. And but yeah, you had some doctors in the family, but sort of back up a bit, like my dad's uncle was a doctor, and he did these missions to Africa where he just set up clinics in just the middle of nowhere, just these little villages that just no one visited, just because they didn't have any access to medical care whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so he would go out to all these different clinics and just do a circuit, and he just lived there for years. And then my mom's grandfather was a doctor as well, and it was pretty cool. He was like the second class at Columbia Med School, taught sterile practice in the late 1800s. And this was just when anesthesia came around, just when antiseptic techniques came around. And so it was the first time you could ethically open the abdomen and thorax without just
Right.
guaranteeing someone's going to die of a massive infection. And
Right.
so, yeah, he was on the ground floor figuring out what sort of surgeries you could do, what you could fix. And so the guy was a badass. Like he had a foundry, like he'd smelt iron and like work metal. And he would think about different problems, and he'd sort of like, okay, how do I get at this? And like think about tools that that might help facilitate doing something. And he would figure out new surgeries and new tools to go with it, and then he would go make it in his
That's
forge like a man.
that
And
is impressive.
yeah, and I still have some of his pieces that he made and used, which are cool. And yeah, they didn't have Medtronic back then, or Stryker, they just you had to sort of figure it out. So yeah, so I heard all these stories about these guys growing up, and I was like, that's cool as hell. And
That really is.
yeah, and
Especially as they go forge your own tools. Like I
yeah.
know I've suffered the pains of product development, and that's in modern technology,
Mm,
where I have access to 3D printers. Like, so,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, just cool as hell. And so yeah, it was always really interesting to listen to those stories and hear, all the different things that they did and the ways that they went about dealing with it, which I think is really interesting. And when I was in Bangladesh, working or volunteering in the refugee camps, that was sort of a similar thing. Like you went back to basics. You just sort of had a problem. You did not have any fancy tools. You had to figure it out. You just had to figure out what the hell you were going to do.
yep.
Someone comes in, clinically, they've got a collapsed lung. You don't have any imaging. You can't do it. You just got to go straight by clinical exam. Well, no, you don't have the right sort of equipment. You just got to just get some sort of needle that is about the right size. You just stab him in the chest. First time I did that, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to kill this guy. And I was like, when it was like all of a sudden this gas release, I'm like, oh, thank God, Yeah, because like clinically, I was just like, this is what this guy has, and but I was just like, it was a bit nerve wracking just to like
I
use the
bet.
wrong equipment to then sort of address this. And but I mean, it's the right thing to do anyway. If you have someone with like a pneumothorax, like you don't wait till they get to the get back from X-ray, because they could have died by then.
Exactly.
So you just have to just make the call. But it's nice to have the right equipment as well. But but yeah, I was going to ask you actually, just sort of jumping back to the X-ray is something I was curious about. Like, because it obviously, they say that you just do one set, right? And you just do one set, but I recover much better than I've ever recovered before. And so, I do a lot more sets just regularly. And so I find myself doing like a couple of sets. What do you find you do? Are you just doing one set, or are you doing multiple sets of these?
So I think the one set, this is my kind of thoughts around it. I think in theory, it makes sense. Like you do one set, you take the muscle to fatigue, you create the stimulus the muscle needs to grow. Kind of what we were talking about earlier is people think they're at failure when they're really not.
Right.
And they really have more in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of the way I think about it is, I mean, it's true for me too. Like, I think I'm at failure, but really, I need a second, a third, a fourth set if I really want to elicit the stimulus for growth. So I think for like a brand new trainer, like someone that's brand new, like probably one set, like, all right, the muscle's never even done that movement before. Like you elicited a response. And I think they can get by with like this low volume, high frequency. Whereas I think someone more advanced, they tend to need more sets to elicit the response. And so in theory, I think the one set makes a lot of sense, but I think in practice, I don't think it's ideal for most people.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. And I just often wondered that, like, I mean, it sort of stand to reason that, the more work you did, the more benefit you get out of it. Obviously, you get diminishing returns at a certain point. You can obviously hurt yourself or injure yourself. But, barring that, stopping before you do that, I would imagine that it would sort of, just give you better results.
Yeah, I like to think about it. It's like, okay, if you were gonna like work your chest out, you could bench press all day long, but how much more benefit are you going to get from that versus doing, or you can just take it to the other extreme, one set? And there's probably a minimum effective dose, which is I like to think a lot in terms of like muscle building and progression. But you want to find like the minimum effective dose that's going to give you the maximum stimulus. Like you don't want to be working out for 24 hours, but one set might not be the minimum effective dose to get you kind of like the maximum results. And I do think it's going to vary for, people on wherever they are in their strength training journey. Like for example, a brand new person could, lean towards one set, whereas someone's been training for, decades, like they might need 4 or 5 sets per exercise. And then maybe they do 3 different exercises for a certain muscle group. So they're hitting that muscle group with 15 different sets from 3 different kinds of biomechanical angles, like different strength curves. And that could be what they really need to like elicit continual growth. So I do think it's a continuum, though most people probably are further to the left of that continuum than I see a lot of like beginner people like, all right, I did 20 sets of bench press. I'm like, you probably didn't need to do that many.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you still compete now? Do you do competitions, or is it just more for your own enjoyment?
No, you know what? I actually never had any desire to do competitions. The reason I started doing it was in dental school. I was created a couple programs, like a fat loss program, muscle building program. And it's also kind of the reason why I stopped drinking too, is I'm very much like someone that needs to practice what they preach. Like to be able to say something and not do, like if I'm out drinking on the weekend and I'm building like fitness courses, I'm like, there's like something that I just can't get behind there. And so, but anyways, I wasn't really interested in competing, but I had this fat loss program. I was like, well, I at least want to like, let me do it and then show the results.
Yeah.
So I did one in dental school. I did one after dental school. And it was really just, I was in a gym where there was people that were interested in competing. And I was like, all right, I mean, I'll do it again, just kind of for fun.
Yeah.
But I really don't have any interest in like competing, but I do have like the personal interest of like always just trying to get better. So I mean that's how I think. I never really wanted to get on stage and be like,
Yeah.
let's but I am a competitive person. So
Yeah.
it is kind of the one thing I do like about it is when you have like a goal to strive for, it's like sometimes like we're talking, you can just go through the motions. Well, that will get, if you sign up for a bodybuilding competition, that'll get you out of just going through the motions. Like you're like,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be on stage in front of people. Like I need to get in gear.
Yeah. That's a motivator.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Your classmates in dental school must have just hated you, just walking into just yoked every day,
Oh, I don't know about that. Like competing down for like getting really lean, man, you get tired. It's not really fun towards the
Yeah.
end of that. I'm sure I probably wasn't that pleasant to even be around.
Yeah. That's funny. Um, I was going to say, obviously coming from a dental perspective, is this something that you recommend to your patients as well? Is this something that you see a benefit in the dental world?
So for a little bit of perspective, I really focused my dental career in like two areas. One is something called dental sleep medicine, which is basically treating sleep disordered breathing. So everything from
Mhm.
snoring to obstructive sleep apnea, like severe obstructive sleep apnea. So that was like the one area of focus. Then my other area of focus was pediatric dentistry, which is I do part-time. So the long story short is I'm seeing these kids in certain settings. Most of the time their parents aren't there. I talk about nutrition, like don't eat so much sugar,
Yeah.
but that only goes so far. With the kids, it's like I tell them don't eat so much sugar. I think that goes through in one ear out the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
Uh,
And of course, you're going to say that you're a dentist. That's
but I do think that there's some good I can do where it's like, hey, we got to take out a bunch of teeth. No kid likes that. So it's like, hey, I know this was not fun today. So if you don't want to do this in the future, maybe we cut back on the sugar, start brushing your teeth, those kinds of
yeah.
things. But like in as a whole, like if humans are eating like from the time they're born, like let's just include their mother in that because there can be some prenatal stuff.
Mhm.
But if they're on like you would say a species appropriate diet,
Mhm.
man, dentistry is out of business, right? Like
Yeah.
so you don't yeah that I mean that's how I feel about it. Like literally there would be there first of all there wasn't dentist like I looked up the other day, when was the first dental school in the United States? I think it was like mid late 19th century. Like before
Wow.
that there was no dental school, so it's like think about it, like there was no
Yeah.
dentist.
Yeah.
And so before modern food, like largely there was largely like anthropological records is like there was no like tooth, like our teeth weren't crowded, like they came in straight.
Mm.
We didn't have decay until really agriculture. uh and then which really sped up with like the modern diet. So
Yeah.
yeah, like dentistry, like if we're mostly eating meat there, it would it collapse, which would be a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how I feel about, medicine as well. We used to treat very different things, and there were some things that you're just not going to escape from, like, pregnancy and childbirth, congenital and genetic disorders, um, infectious disease, trauma, and
Trauma, that's what dentistry would be relegated to
yeah,
basically. Yeah, you got a
yeah,
tooth
yeah.
knocked out, okay, you need a dentist to do
Yeah, yeah,
something.
it's like broken. You have to like pull it or reconstruct it, and yeah, exactly. And trauma was a lot of what medicine was as well, and then poisoning. Getting you got stung by something, or you ate something stupid, or
Yep.
you got bitten by a snake, and that was a major. Those are the major areas, and now we have these chronic diseases, and that's like 85% of what we do.
Yep.
But but those didn't exist. People say, "Oh, well, you think they were there, but we just didn't notice it." Like, not a chance in hell.
No.
Because you, first of all, anyone who's lived with any of these sorts of diseases, like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, like about it. And this is not something that you're just gonna be like, oh yeah, I guess that's normal. And just
Right.
not, it's not gonna just come up. You will go to see a doctor about it when you're, just copious bloody diarrhea at all
Yeah.
times. Like,
Yep.
that's going to raise some alarm bells. And also, people made their names in medicine by describing new diseases. You know, they put their name on it. That's why we have Osler's nodes and Trendelenburg gait and Colles fractures. You know, like these are the guys who figured it out and just first described them, and their names are now, you know, benchmarks in history. And everyone wanted to do this. And so no, you know, these things weren't always around, and then we just figured it out, you know, because we're just so stupid. Just everyone born before 1986 is an idiot, and just, you know, that Da Vinci guy, what an asshole he was, you know, you couldn't see the door in front of his face, you know. I mean, that guy was doing so many dissections and so many autopsies and so many, working with so many cadavers, because the Catholic Church had finally sort of, you know, taken down the restriction on cadaveric dissections for the artists, so that they could really learn the hell out of the human body in order to augment their art, which was, you know, thought to uplift the church. And so that was when we really first started getting into this. And like, you know, you had actual, you know, verifiable geniuses like Da Vinci and Michelangelo doing this all the time. Are we saying that these guys are so stupid they wouldn't have figured it out? You know, like you with your iPad or smarter, who has not gone to medical school, you know, like, why are you critiquing this stuff? You know, but yeah, of course, absolutely not. You know, I mean, and think about the difference between the 1980s or 90s and the 1970s and 60s. Not that much different, you know. And a lot of these people are the same doctors who are now seeing a higher rate of these diseases that they treat. You know, one decade later, their practice has changed. You know, like these guys just didn't notice it. You know, so yeah, I mean, when the obesity rate triples, I mean, you didn't just not notice that, did you? You know?
I mean, obesity is like the thing in clear sight. Like basically, if you go 100 years ago, it's like this rare kind of thing, right? And then it's now we're expected 50% of adults to be obese, like by the end of this decade. Like,
yeah,
I mean, that's like something like someone has to explain that, right?
Yeah. Well, too much fat, obviously, you know, because we're eating less fat than ever, and yet we're getting more fat, but it must be the fat. You know, it's just like this is why you need to teach logic in school. You know, like it's just,
I do feel like the common sense gets left out a lot, because I know you like paleoanthropology, which I'm fascinated by as well. And a lot of people are like, you know, theory, but I'm like, sometimes if you just like use like common sense and just think about things, it's like things like kind of like open up. Like the analogy I like to give people is like, imagine like you and your family and your closest friends, and we just dumped you in an African safari. Like, what would you eat?
yeah,
Like, you're eating meat. Like, look, that's what you have. Like, that's what's on the buffet for you. You're not eating like grains or flours or vegetable oils, or like like you're not, like, those things don't exist. And so, I mean, I think when people think like that, it makes them feel okay to eat meat, when it's like, obviously that's what we would have eaten. Like, it's very obvious, like it's undebatable that like humans were like you can't say we weren't heavy meat eaters. Maybe so can make the argument like we ate some underground storage organs, like that supplemented our diet, but by no means like we are here like because we ate meat. Like, and to anthropologists, like that's not even an argument. Like, it's clear in that science.
Absolutely. And
but it hasn't really bridged to other sciences.
Well, that's the thing. People haven't gotten together and spoken, interdisciplinarily. That's something that I was trying to do, just like finding all these little pieces from all these different fields and just sort of bring it all together. And there was one, I forget who said it, but they said when people talk about like, oh, we're supposed to eat plants, we're supposed to eat vegetables, and they had like a picture of like Yosemite or something like that, this big forest and trees and this, that, and the other. It said, point out the vegetables, and it was just like, oh, it's just like, you're not going to, it's like, you don't know. I mean, most plants on earth are inedible. They will make you very, very sick. And, that's something that people know intuitively. You get lost in the woods, you can't just eat any random plant. Most of them will kill you. And yet we then go home and say, oh, but spinach is good for you. Why? Why would that be different? Why would that hold to different physical laws?
and look at the history of like your healthiest vegetables, like broccoli, right? It's like
Mm.
go eat some broccoli in the wild. Do you see what that wild plant, those of the crucifer vegetables? It looks like a little weed, right? So
Yeah.
these vegetables did not exist until we like specially bred them,
Yeah.
which is done in the last century.
Yeah, that's
And
it.
so it
Yeah.
like it'll blow people's mind, be like, okay, wait, that food didn't even exist.
Yeah.
And now it's like you must eat this to be healthy. Like that does
Yeah.
like that does not pass any logic. Like
No.
the burden of proof is on them to tell me that that's healthy, not the other way around.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing. They're saying it's like, no, no, we evolved eating these things. I'm like, these things didn't exist when we were evolving. They're brand new, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah. And that's the thing too, is that, you know, us being carnivores, or at least heavy meat eaters, is very well described in anthropology, and and in the fossil record. This is just something that's known in that discipline. Well, it's something that's known in botany and horticulture, that plants are poisonous. They use poisons to stop animals from eating them. And the plants that are not killing us right away, or that are less dangerous, it's not because they're less poisonous. It's because we have more defenses to the poisons in them. And like, oxalates will do a number on you, but we at least have something we can, we can at least contend with oxalates. We can at least contend with a certain amount of cyanide, funny as that sounds.
Yep.
You get some, North American hemlock, water hemlock, that will just kill you with
Yep.
like just a tiny little bit of that. You, within, seconds to minutes, you will start having seizures. You will not be able to stop having seizures, and you will die.
Yep.
Period. And that's the legacy of plants. Like, this is how they survive. Nature's wild. It's kill or be killed for plants as well. And
Yep.
so, if they can't defend themselves, they're gone. But they're not gone. So what does that tell you? That means they've been through the gauntlet of evolution, and they're
That's
standing.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I do think like this multidisciplinary approach to nutrition is like what's needed to put the puzzle pieces together. And
Mm,
I think that's what it sounds like. You and I kind of have like a similar like approach to that, where it's like
mm,
I came at it from fitness. I was like, this is what worked to get my body in good
yeah.
shape. And then I was like, oh, this is what has good oral, this is what leads to good oral health. This is what leads to me feeling good and having brain function. Oh, let's throw some paleoanthropology in there, some
Mhm.
botany in there. And it's like, all right, if you start putting the puzzle pieces together, it's like,
Yeah.
all right, like it's like, hey, we can actually figure out this natural, species appropriate diet, which is like most animals can figure out on their own in the wild, but like we have become too smart to figure out what we should eat.
Mm,
But basically get back to like some kind of instinctual sense around food consumption, which should be
yeah.
like the most natural sense we have.
Yeah. Well, that's the saying, right? That humans are the only animals smart enough to figure out, how to make their own food, and dumb enough to eat it. You know,
Yeah.
because you do, like, if you think about this, how are we going to create something that's more healthy than what we're biologically prepared for and designed for?
And I hear
You
people
can't
try
get
and make
better than that.
arguments against that. And that's like,
Mm,
man, you're, I mean, you got to start like with logic a little bit, right?
yeah. Well, and
Like, no,
also,
maybe these inventions are better than what nature offers. And I'm like,
yeah.
oh, man, I,
Yeah, but is it, like, but and what evidence do you have? You have somebody who's like, oh well, these scientists did that. I was like, well, were they right? Did they get it? I mean, I'm sorry, but they're probably not smarter than millions of years of evolution, or God who created us, whatever you want to go with. We are designed a certain way. And if you were smart as a scientist, you'd figure out what that way is and try to
yeah,
emulate that and try to live that way, because that's how we're perfectly adapted and designed to be. It doesn't get any better than that, and especially when you're adding in things that are poisonous and
yeah,
cause poisoning, you know. And yeah, I mean, it all comes back to just the scaremongering over cholesterol, that just changed everything,
man, that
because
really did. I
yeah,
mean, to me, that's like one of the most dangerous switches is like saturated fat bad, start eating vegetable oils. Like that was pretty catastrophic.
Big time. Yeah. And just specifically avoid meat. Don't eat meat.
Well, I mean, yeah, and as a byproduct of
Yeah.
don't eat saturated fats, don't eat meat. And man,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, as much as like I thought, like, and it really is kind of humbling or naive or something, but it's like I've been in the sciences since a kid, basically. Studied chemistry, biology in college, through dental school, and even then I subconsciously thought like red meat's bad, right? Like with like that was just ingrained in my consciousness. And that's why I ate lots of chicken breast. Like red meat, saturated fat was bad. So it's still very much like, even though like I believe if you look through the research, like saturated fat is pretty much exonerated in my opinion. Like if you look at the evidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like it has a long way to go to reach any kind of public consciousness. Like even people I know that I've convinced that it's healthy still trim fat off their meat.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why are you trimming the fat off your meat? Like this, almost everyone that eats red meat trims the fat off it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's what you're supposed to do. But like, why? Like, so it is ingrained in.
Well, I talk to people and, talk to them about like how, it's actually, sugar, what's the problem? And they, got, the cholesterol is used as a scapegoat and all this stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, I know that totally makes sense. And, yeah, I know that fat's not bad. Yeah, it's totally sugar and this, that, and the other. And then they say, yeah, I want an egg white omelet and I want that this, and it's all like low fat, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, what did we just talk about? Like the fat's good for you, eat the damn fat. But Kevin, thank you so much. I understand, we've been going for a bit of time. I'm conscious of your time. I don't want to take up your whole day. Where can people find you and how do they follow your stuff?
Hey, well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I feel like there's a lot of stuff we could dive into. So I think we'll have to do this again. Because I know people have questions about dental stuff and I'm happy to talk about it, even though I'm glad I think we talked about more of like, sometimes the dental stuff is like, hey, let's majoring in the minors. Let's focus on like the big building blocks of like, food and what you should be eating. But the questions about fluoride and those come up constantly. But yeah, thanks for having me on. We should do it again. I run the site meat.health, which is there's a bunch of guides, like 30-day guide to doing carnivore, the health danger of plant-based diet. I'm finishing the next guide, which has been years in the making, as a macronutrient one, because everyone's concerned about macros. So dissecting macronutrients. So hopefully that'll be done this year sometime. But yeah, and then I'm just on all the social media places.
Awesome. Cool. We'll put that all in the show notes and, encourage everyone to check it out. I've been on your email list for a while and it's always get like a weekly
newsletter every weekend.
Yeah, which is great. And so people should sign up for that and check it out. Kevin, thanks so much. Absolutely. Definitely have to do this again. I do want to talk to you about a lot of the dental stuff as well. And actually fluoride, that's something that I don't know anything about, but always comes up. And people
does come up a lot.
Like, what about fluoride? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I need to find that out too. And so definitely we'll set up something else. So thank you so much, man.
Perfect. Hey, it's a pleasure. Thanks.
Buddy.